public meeting to order at 5:30 p.m. and ask for are there any amendments to the agenda?
Through Mayor Lawrence, I have none.
Thank you. A motion to confirm that the agenda for the statutory public meeting of May 18th, 2022 be approved as presented. Moved by Councillor Timpson, seconded by Councillor Fenelon. All in favor? Carried. Declarations of pecuniary interest.
Through Mayor Lawrence, I have none.
Thank you. Applications, 49 York Street zoning bylaw amendment number Z03-2022. The applicant is the Independent First Nations Alliance. Introduction and overview. This public meeting is being held pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13, as amended by Independent First Nations Alliance for the subject property known locally as 49 York Street. The subject property is described legally as Plan M220, Lot 336, Parcel 13620. The purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment is to permit the construction of a 6-unit dwelling on the subject property, which is not a permitted use in the residential type 2 R2 zone. A quadruplex is permitted use within the R2 zone, subject to meeting specific zoning provisions and standards. The planning coordinator will confirm how notice was served to advertise the public meeting.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lawrence, notice was circulated to internal staff and external bodies by email. Notice was advertised in the Sioux Bulletin and on the municipal website and social media, sent by mail to property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, as well as various agencies, and signs were posted at the property entrance.
Thank you. The planning coordinator will provide a summary of the application.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence. So as mentioned, an application for zoning bylaw amendment has been submitted by Independent First Nations Alliance for the subject property at 49 York Street. The applicant is proposing to construct a 6-unit dwelling on the subject property, which is not a permitted use in the residential type 2 zone. Thus, the zoning bylaw amendment is required. The subject property has about 20 meters of lot frontage on York Street, which is an open, municipally maintained road and is also accessible from the municipally maintained back lane. The subject property has a lot area of 920 square meters and is currently vacant. The subject property is located within the residential designation of the official plan and the residential type 2 zone in the zoning bylaw. A proposed site plan and floor plan was included in the application. The building is proposed to have 2 stories with a main floor area of about 309 square meters with a mix of 2 and 3 bedroom units of about 85 square meters. The provincial policy statement directs most growth to settlement areas, calls for the efficient use of land and resources, and requires that a range and mix of housing options be provided. The subject property is located in the urban Sioux Lookout settlement area, and the proposed development would intensify an existing lot that is currently underutilized. The subject property is serviced with municipal water and sewer. The provincial policy statement also discusses land use compatibility, including in regard to major facilities and sensitive land uses. Rail facilities are considered a major facility and residential uses are considered a sensitive use. The subject property is located directly south of the CN rail yard. The subject property is an existing lot and located in an existing residential neighborhood. No negative effects are expected on the subject property due to the proximity of the rail yard, as the area is already developed and the proposed 6-unit dwelling is not located any closer to the rail yard than any existing residential development. CN was also included in the notification process and no comments from them have been received. The application conforms to the municipality's official plan. The subject property is located in the urban Sioux Lookout settlement area and is designated residential. The official plan specifically calls for a range of housing types and encourages development with infill and intensification, which the proposed development would achieve. The official plan does establish parameters for low, medium, and high density development. The proposed development on 49 York Street is considered high density development in this context. However, the intensity of the use is limited by the size of the individual units. The proposed dwelling also meets all of the relevant provisions of the zoning bylaw, including lot coverage, setbacks, and parking requirements. These factors indicate that the built form is consistent with other single detached dwellings and multiple residential dwellings up to 4 units that could be built as of right. The subject property is located in the residential type 2 zone of the zoning bylaw. Overall, the subject property and proposed dwelling meets the requirements of the R2 zone in terms of lot area, frontage, setbacks, landscape open space, etc. The parking requirements are also satisfied as 7 parking spaces are required by the zoning bylaw and 7 spaces have been provided on the site plan. Site plan control is applicable to this development and will be required should the application be approved to ensure that technical elements are satisfied and the development is properly integrated into the surrounding neighborhood. 2 comments have been received by staff regarding this application, with one being in favor of the development and one with some concerns in opposition. And I also believe there's one member of the public who is attending via Zoom who is asked to speak in opposition. After staff review, it appears that the proposed 6-unit dwelling is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the official plan. And so staff are recommending that council approve the zoning bylaw amendment.
Thank you. The planning coordinator will read out any correspondence received from government agencies and municipal staff.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, there were no comments received from government agencies or municipal staff.
Thank you. The planning coordinator will read out any correspondence received from the public.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, one comment in favor of the application was received by Mr. Daniel Pellerin. I'm in possession of a letter indicating a request for a zoning change for the property listed as 49 York Street, for which I thank you for bringing the request to my attention. As I understand, this request is to allow a 6-residence building to be permitted. At present, the zoning is for R2, which allows for a 4-residence building to be permitted. As I was asked if I wish to provide comments on this application, I shall do so. Initially, I did not agree to a zoning change from the present R2 zoning. The present mix of housing on York, Robert, and Wellington is all R2 and comprised of mostly single detached housing. There is a 4-unit building on Wellington Avenue already, and it blends in with the character of the neighborhood. It is, in my opinion, that generally 4 units on a 66 by 150 foot lot is the maximum that a property can sustain without changing the characteristics of the residential nature of the area. Upon reviewing the lot plan and the building plan submitted by IFNA, I note that a 2-story building is being proposed with 3 apartments per floor. Each apartment is approximately 1,000 square feet in size. Should the building have been 6 units on 1 floor, then I would have objected as the apartments became more of a motel suite size. The apartments would not be conducive for longer term stays that a 4-plex with 2-bedroom units would provide for. Generally, a 6-unit building is more of a commercial apartment building and would usually be located in a higher density neighborhood. A 6-unit apartment will require parking for a minimum of 7 full-size vehicles and the room to remove snow. As this building is located 1 lot from the end of the block next to a lot with a business on it, it does not significantly change the character of the neighborhood. Therefore, I will not object to this specific development. Please note that this does not automatically infer acceptance of additional residential zoning variances in the neighborhood. Cordially yours, Daniel Pellerin. And then we also received 1 comment in opposition to the application from Nate Hochstetler. As a neighboring homeowner, I have several suggestions for the developers of this lot. Let me say first off, I'm not against the development, just how it is being proposed. If construction continues as planned, all the trees on the property will need to be cut down and removed. Because of the high water table and the tendency of the lot flooding, fill will need to be brought in, thus raising the level of the 2-story building. The 1.5 meter setback will put the new building approximately 15 feet from my fenced-in backyard with no trees to provide privacy. The 2nd-story windows will be well above the level of my fence and give those tenants full view of the privacy of my fenced backyard. I understand the need for a 6-plex to provide living space for staff, but most professionals coming on to town on contract don't need a 3-bedroom apartment to get started in their careers. In my experience with property management, most tenants are looking for 2-bedroom accommodations. If this building would be designed as all 2-bedroom apartments, the footprint of the building would be reduced, there would be less parking needed, Maybe the trees could stay, and with no windows on the sides of the building facing the neighbors, my backyard would still give me some privacy. Leaving the trees intact would maintain the residential feel of the neighborhood as well. Also, if the building would be more positioned to the center of the lot, some green space for tenants could be placed on the backside of the building. Working together to construct a building that is more suitable for the neighborhood will go a long way in relationships with all parties involved. Respectfully submitted, Nate Hochstetler.
Thank you. And the applicant or a representative is invited to speak to the application. Is there a representative that wishes to speak? Mr. Hop,
Yes, I would like to speak there, Mayor.
please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor and Council, and of course, the municipality and everyone else and neighbors. Today, I had a chance to kind of have a chat with two of our adjacent neighbors, Jim DeRose, who is on 51, lot 51, and of course, Nate Hostetler on lot 47, directly east and west of our existing lot proposed development. We had a chance to kind of walk around and kind of do a rough layout based on where the building would be in terms of on the lot. Talked about the trees, the privacy issues, that concerns. During the discussion, you know, we talked about a couple of things. One is ensuring there's privacy, figuring out what to do with the retaining wall, and then looking at existing kind of where the building is going to be located, the 8 meter kind of distance from the back alleyway, the parking lot where it would be adjacent kind of access off of York Street, and then just look at the tree issue kind of thing. Based on the kind of where the location of the lot is, and there's a lot of always kind of collection of water in that area, and of course it's more downstream of all that drainage in town kind of thing, we will have to lift and provide some kind of additional fill put into that lot there to keep it out of the high and dry, but also at the same time too, I've further acknowledged and talked to Nate and said, hey, there's no way we're gonna be able to keep those trees. And once we started disturbing the ground and adjusting it, either reducing it or filling it or whatever, we will lose those trees. However, we did talk about and kind of come to agreement about, you know, beefing up the retaining wall appropriately, doing that, extending a fence down his side of his property, planting trees on his side of the property to kind of provide that privacy. And at the same time too, if you're to look at that kind of existing layout, is adjusting our windows that would be on that east facing elevation. And what we would do is go from 4 windows and changing their orientation for the kitchen window to facing York Street, moving the bathroom to the middle of the apartment, moving a window from the bedroom to the south side. And then we only have 2 windows. We can kind of deal with the privacy is kind of put on some kind of fogging over. So it's more of still permits to be opened, but at the same time too, you can't really see out of it kind of thing. A combination of the retaining wall and the fence and privacy, but at the same time too, the trees. He was content with that kind of approach of kind of dealing with it. So we appreciated that. I talked to Mr. Jim DeRose at the same time too. His concern was talking a bit about drainage issues in terms of runoff, and if you put some fill in there and take some stuff out, right, what are you going to do? So of course we committed to making sure that, yeah, we're not going to impact his property negatively with spring runoff and having that kind of thing. So we're making sure that work with the council and of course planning department to making sure that there is no issues or impacts to their property kind of thing. So in terms of the information shared and where we talked about, our 2 neighbors adjacent to the property, they're content with our discussion and plans going forward and adjustments there kind of thing. What we haven't done is we haven't shared that update in terms of the orientation of the bedrooms to make that kind of changes. And it's not going to change the size of the dimensions of the structure of the lot layout. It's just more of orientation of windows to be more privy to our neighbor there. So that's kind of what we have right now. And definitely open to any other comments and suggestions about how we can kind of make this thing work. The primary reason why we're doing this in terms of a 4 versus a 6 is just economics in terms of we will be doing some heavy investment with retaining wall, trees, development, landscaping, fill. And it's just a 6 versus a 4 makes it a lot easier for us to make it more efficient in terms of economical, but at the same time too, we want to be a good neighbor to all of our neighbors and for the neighborhood. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hop. We'll now move to questions from members of council and the public. First, members of council. Going around the table, start with Councillor Timpson.
Yeah, question for Matt. Yeah, I'm really glad that you had that discussion with the neighbors. I think that's a really good good way to operate. I wondered what you thought about the suggestion from Nate Hostetler about 2-bedroom units instead of 3.
Yeah, we talked about that, right? And I know the letter was submitted to council before we had the discussion, and I'm not putting words into his mouth, but I said to him, you know, after our kind of walk through the lot today and the pouring rain and just kind of laying it out roughly, he wasn't further concerned about 2 versus 3 bedrooms kind of thing. And I know what he was concerned about primarily was windows facing his property and just a lack of privacy. But then he further acknowledged that when we're doing the changes to those, there's a large stem of trees on the one corner that provides coverage to his backyard of his lot. Once we start changing, moving any kind of adjustment to existing land and kind of landscaping, those trees were going to have to come down either immediately or in the near future. And to be honest, having trees crash down on his property or my property in terms of the IFNA property, probably not the best thing for us. So I think the 3 versus the 2, it does give us a bit more flexibility with kind of just making sure that we can kind of bring additional staff. And I know company wise, in terms of our challenges, like everybody else in town, trying to bring in people for adequate housing and helping them be here to kind of fill in positions that we have is the primary reason why we have the 2 versus 3 bedroom combination. It just gives a bit more flexibility. And with the flexibility of having kind of a 3rd bedroom gives people coming into our kind of town to be a part of IFNA and other places is that with COVID, everybody likes to have that kind of 3rd office option kind of thing or 3rd room available for a bit of privacy. And I know we're trying to hope for COVID not to be a concern going forward, but it does give us a bit more leverage there too. So.
Councillor Timpson, yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I had one more question. I noticed that the lot at 51, it's a half lot and it's for sale. Is this, I had wondered if Mr. DeRose was concerned about sort of the effect on selling his property with this drainage issue that he was describing.
Yeah, when I was meeting with him today, him and Nate, he didn't mention anything about a concern about any issues pertaining to his sale of his existing property. So he didn't raise it with me. So I'm not quite sure if that is an issue. So I figured if I was there talking to him, if there was a concern, he may have mentioned it, but he did not.
Okay, thanks.
Can I just, before I go to Councillor Cassidy, CBO, is there not, you can't interrupt your neighbor's drainage or cause drainage problems for a neighbor, can you? Either building code or bylaw?
Yeah, through your Mayor Lawrence, our property standards bylaw speaks to that, as well as through the site plan, if approved, site plan control agreement will apply to this property, and through that process will ensure that drainage is directed where it should go.
So a neighbor's concern would be the drainage would not be impacted in a negative way by any development.
Through your Mayor Lawrence, yeah, the drainage on site has to be controlled on site to municipal drainage systems.
Thanks. Councillor Cassidy.
I don't have a lot further to add. Thank you, Matt. It sounds like you did a lot of the legwork with some of the potential issues, and again, working with your neighbors and finding solutions. I think it's great. I have no comments or concerns. I think this is a great development in a good part of town. So look forward to seeing it. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Councillor Fenelon.
Yeah, so it's nice to see that we're having some buildings and stuff like that made and making use of lots and stuff like that. But I have one concern that we're going higher and wider, which makes more chances for other stuff to happen. But I just have one question: is have they met the Ontario Fire Code? And I don't know what it is, but I'm just suggesting because it's such a big lot, and not a big lot, but it's a big construction on that lot.
Maybe I can address that to the CBO.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, we haven't really got to that stage yet, but I just know for building setbacks to property lines and unprotected openings in that wall, the 1.5 meter setback allows a certain percentage of unprotected openings that is usually easily met. It's when you're trying to be right on a property line, you're going to get into kind of fire code, building code issues. But with the 1.5 setback, you stay away from that sort of stuff.
But all of those concerns will be part of the building permit application review process.
Exactly, yes.
Councillor Fenlon.
I was thinking about egress out of the apartments themselves. Are they going to meet the code or not?
CBO.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I haven't seen a detailed set of drawings yet, but yeah, as long as they got direct access to the outside world and egress compliant windows where needed, then it shouldn't be an issue.
I guess the short answer is if it doesn't meet the code, it's not going to get a building permit. It has to meet the code before it gets a building permit.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, exactly. Yeah, it's got to go through the process to obtain the building permit, and that's the plans review as part of that process.
Thank you. Councillor Fenlon, anything else?
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lego.
Yeah, I do like the fact that it is a two-story. It reduces the overall footprint of the building itself. As I read, it went down to 33% of the lot size. The max you can have is 50%. So lots of area now with it being 2 stories. I appreciate that IFNA again is going out to the neighbors and having frank discussions and getting feedback from their neighbors. Maybe if the lot next to it is coming up for sale, it might be something to think about as well. So yeah, I don't really have an issue with this. We've already gone down this road with some of the 7 plexes that were built in this community, and the government wants infill and intensification in the urban settlement areas, and that's what this provides. So I do not have an issue moving forward with this.
Thank you. Councillor Bath.
Yeah, as you can see, Mayor Lawrence, I have no camera, and really by our procedural bylaw, I shouldn't be attending the meeting. I am not allowed to participate, so I'm reluctant to say anything at this point, and I think it's up to council to decide whether I should be here or not. But right now, I am in violation of our procedural bylaw. I'll let council deal with that.
Thanks, Councillor Bath. I'll ask the clerk to help us here.
Pardon me, through you, Mayor Lawrence. Yes, Councillor Bath is quite correct that video and audio need to be present in accordance with council's procedure bylaw. So council has essentially 2 options. One, to pass the motion to essentially set aside that requirement for Councillor Bath for this meeting, or to ask Councillor Bath to discontinue participation in the meeting.
All right. So we have 2 options, Council. I will put out first, ask for a motion that we abide by the procedural bylaw and Councillor Bath not be participating in the meeting. Mover. Councillor Fanlon, seconded by. This is for discussion, you're not voting in favor of it. I'm just asking for Councillor Cassidy, discussion. He puts it on the table now. Councillor Timpson.
I think we have to be realistic that technical problems are going to occur, and I mean, the whole council could end up sometime not having our video cameras working, and we'd have to cancel the meeting. So I would oppose abiding by the policy at this point.
Thank you, Councillor Lego.
Yeah, considering we're already down 1 councillor, I think for this 1 meeting, I would be okay with this.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy.
I'm okay with it.
Councillor Fanlon.
I'll be in favor of it too.
Then there's not much more point in discussing it. I'll call the appropriate to have a vote, clerk. I've put a motion, yeah. All in favor, and if you're in favor of the motion that's on the table, then Councillor Bath leaves, so all in favor? I think Councillor Fanning, you spoke, if you raise your hand in favor, the motion is to ask Councillor Bath to leave, so all opposed to asking Councillor Bath to leave? Who's in opposition? Nay votes to the motion on the, let's be clear. Clerk, read the motion once again, please. I'm sorry, I put the motion forward to abide by the bylaws, not to immediately break them. So that was the motion for discussion. Now we've had the discussion. Let's call the vote on what are we voting?
Through Mayor Lawrence, that council abide by the requirements of the procedure bylaw and ask Councillor Bath to leave the meeting.
So if I ask for all in favor and you raise your hand, you're voting to ask him to leave. All in favor? I see one. And all opposed? I see 1, 2, 3, sorry. That's all we'll get, right? Because we're down. Good, carried. Sorry, not carried, defeated. I should have put it forward in the negative, not the positive. Oh dear. Defeated. Councillor Bath, you may remain. Do you have comments on this application?
If I had voted, I would have voted against it, but however, since you allowed me to stay, I will make comments. I'm just concerned with the, I like to see the development, certainly. I advertised an apartment 2 days ago and I had 15 responses within an hour and 20 responses within probably 10 hours. So definitely we know that housing is necessary. I am concerned with drainage, and I think it's going to be very important that the site drainage is looked at very carefully. That is a very low area, and we know that along there floods. Really, that's all I have to talk about on it.
Thank you, Councillor Bath. We'll now move to questions from members of the public. Members of the public are invited to speak to the application. The public can ask questions of clarification or seek background information, speak in support of the application, or speak in opposition to the application. All questions will be directed through the chair. It is requested that only one question be asked at a time. Please identify yourself before you ask your question so that you can be properly recorded in the minutes of the public meeting. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to the application?
Mayor Lawrence, I believe Mr. Doug McMillan would like to comment.
Okay. All right. Doug, you're under the Nancy Masson. Is that your
Right, yes.
You're muted, Mr. McMillan. You need to unmute.
Okay.
There we go. Please state your name and ask your question. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm Douglas McMillan. I'm currently residing in Manitoba. I own property in Sioux on York Street, as a matter of fact. My only real interest in speaking at this meeting tonight is that, you know, the town does have zoning requirements and stuff for buildings. And it is interesting that every time something comes up, special meetings are being held and granting, you know, allowances to build buildings on R2 that aren't allowed and in different places. And I sort of come from a special place on this because in 1977, I bought a considerable amount of property on York Street. I didn't anticipate the CN oil leak, but I did in my mind see a real future outlook for development, whether it be with the town or whatever, because it was an opportunity for some development. I was thinking apartments at the time. So I bought it in 77. And while I was up the lake in 78, I have my fishing business, which I purchased from George Samuel. A special motion was put through council without advising me that my R2 lots that I had bought had become commercial and industrial lots. And I was pretty upset about it because I was up in Lac Sioux and working about 16 or 18 hours a day. Steve's here and he'd understand what I'm talking about. But it was interesting because when I complained about it, they told me that there could be some real good potential in having some commercial lots for silica eventually for future development. Now, I was thinking mostly apartments at the time. And so I went along with the change and the increased tax rate that was going to be on it. There was an allowance at that time for a reduction on the taxes, on the vacancy taxes, because of the fact that it was swampland and the development of the lots was fairly expensive. Now, I hate it when I see a zoning, which I had on York Street, which allowed for a 6-plex or a 12-plex or whatever, you know, we could work out with the town for apartment shortages and whatnot. And I thought that would be a pretty lucrative or, you know, positive thing for the future of silica. And so when I see this meeting taking place, I'm not phoning to give anyone a hard time. I have had some problems trying to get this developed. The main problem I had was sewer and water. And just prior to Mayor Doug Lawrence coming into power at Silica, I had negotiated a deal with the town. They were very much in need of a lot at the end of my property, next to the garage there, Carol's garage, and they wanted me to sell them the lot next to that. And of course, I didn't want to sell it because that was the only access I had to sewer and water, because it had been brought down to the corner of 59 York Street. And as a result, I entered into an agreement with the town's representatives at the time. And I agreed.
Mr. McMillan, I don't want to cut you off, and I'm not going to cut you off. I want you to get to the point of this application, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't have a real problem with the application as such. However, I do feel that when the town has provisions for in an official plan, they should be working with the people involved to develop these properties for, you know, whatever the municipality might want. But what happened was, in the short thing is that the town took the property from me at an agreed price and agreed to provide service for me on the other end of my lots on the corner of Fifth Avenue, but it wasn't provided. And so it sort of put a stop on everything. It just, the agreement was just defaulted. No one would.
I think I'm going to put a stop on that and just ask any further comments on this application.
Okay. I just want to appeal to council that, you know, instead of having all these special meetings to allow things to be built where they're not specified as 6-plex, my property allows the 6-plex. And there seems to be no interest in developing the property on the same street with the same, you know, problems and stuff. And I would like to see the town and council take a more positive approach to working with me to develop this property.
So I think that's another issue than the application. Would be pleased to talk with you, Mr. McMillan, offline. I'm sure if you contact the CAO, you can set up a meeting with the CAO and the Development Services Manager.
Yeah, I would like to talk to Brickman.
Very good.
And I will.
All right, unless you have anything further
Thank you
on this specific application.
I thank you for your time on this specific application because of the timing. I don't have a problem. It's nice to see young Matthew working with IFNA. It's nice to see Steve taking an interest in it, and Corey, one of my former students. And I don't have an objection to it, but I think you would have had far fewer potential problems if you were using land that was designated for this sort of thing. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. And are there any other members of the public present who wish to speak to the application?
To you, Mayor Lawrence, not to my knowledge.
And I don't see any hands waving or voices. Thank you. Nobody muted that wants to speak. Good. This concludes the public meeting regarding zoning bylaw amendments, number Z03-2022. If any member of the public wishes to be notified of the decision of council in respect of the application, you must make a written request to the planning coordinator. Notice to appeal the decision of council to the Ontario Land Tribunal must be filed, with the planning coordinator no later than 20 days from the date the notice of the decision is circulated. The notice of appeal shall be sent to the attention of the planning coordinator, and it must include the following information: the reasons for the appeal and the fee as prescribed under the Ontario Land Tribunal Act in the amount of $1,100 payable by certified check to the Minister of Finance, Province of Ontario. Only individuals, corporations, or public bodies may appeal the decision of council to the Ontario Land Tribunal. An appeal may not be filed by an unincorporated association or group. A notice of appeal may be filed in the name of an individual who is a member of the association or group. We have two options, and I'm going to ask for advice from the planning department as to do we have option one is if there are no opposing comments, and option two is if there are opposing comments. I'm not sure how you would classify the comments we've received.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, based on the discussion had between the applicant and council and some of the questions that were asked, I would suggest that the opposing comments have largely been dealt with that were specific to this application. And so I would suggest that the recommendation be to approve, just based on the conversation that was had specific to this application.
All right, thank you. I'll put that motion to council. Clerk, did you have your hand up or? Nope, sorry, you were adjusting your glasses. Thank you. Option one, the council receives the planning report dated May 18th, 2022, respecting zoning bylaw amendment number Z03-2022, and further, the council authorized the passing of bylaw number 28-22, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 85-15, being a comprehensive zoning bylaw for the corporation of the municipality of Sioux as amended, IFNA 49 York Street. Moved by Councillor Lego, seconded by Councillor Fenelon. Any further discussion? Councillor Timpson.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, it's unfortunate Mr. Hochstetler isn't here. We will have on file a letter of concern from him and then a verbal report from the applicant about his their discussion. Should we not get something in writing from Nate Hochstetler for our records before we approve this?
Can I direct that to the planning coordinator?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I might defer to Jody just because we haven't had a situation like that since I've been here, but I would guess that it may not be necessary based on the fact that we still have site plan control application coming. And since council has mentioned the issues that Mr. Hochstetler brought up, we can definitely incorporate those into the site plan control agreement. But I'll defer to Jody just to be sure.
Through Mayor Lawrence, yeah, I agree. I mean, his letter of opposition didn't come out directly and say he's opposed to this development. There's just some concerns with what they were proposing on the lot and some privacy issues. And it would seem that through discussions with Matthew and, that some of these issues might be resolved. And then through our process of site plan control, we'll keep those concerns in mind when we work with Matthew and IFNA in developing the site itself. So there's nothing that stands out. I think that can't be resolved through the site plan process and the development process.
Yeah, thank you. I shared Councillor Timpson's view to a certain extent, but your comments are helpful, and also the fact that we have on record the proponent actually saying they will mitigate the concerns. So, and then we do have control mechanisms in place through site plan control. So, Councillor Timpson, are you all right with that response?
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you.
Any further discussion, Council? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks very much, Mr. Hopp and Mr. McMillan and any other members of the public who attended. Second item on the is 69 7th Avenue, temporary use zoning bylaw, amendment number Z04-2022, 2022. Applicant Indigenous Services Canada. This public meeting is being held pursuant to Section 39 and Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13, as amended from Indigenous Services Canada. The application was submitted to permit a temporary use on the subject property located at 69 7th Avenue. The subject property is legally described as Part 6, Planned 23R 6326. The applicant applied for a temporary use bylaw to permit the warehouse use at 69 7th Avenue, which was approved by council in 2020, Z06-2019, bylaw number 08-20. The applicant then applied for an extension to the temporary use bylaw, which was approved by council, bylaw number 91-20. The extension permitted the use until March 18, 2022, and has now expired. A temporary use bylaw is required to permit the use to continue on a temporary basis. The planning coordinator will confirm how notice was served to advertise the public meeting.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, notice was circulated to internal staff and external bodies by email. Notice was advertised in the Sioux Bulletin and on the municipal website and social media, sent by mail to property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, as well as to various agencies, and signs were posted at the property entrance.
Thank you. The planning coordinator will provide a summary of the application.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lawrence. I apologize for a little bit of repetition at the beginning here. So an application for a temporary use zoning bylaw amendment was submitted by Indigenous Services Canada for the subject property at 69 7th Avenue. The application is to permit a warehouse use on the subject property for the purpose of shipping and receiving healthcare supplies to be sent to nursing stations in remote First Nations communities. The subject property is zoned multiple residential and does not permit a warehouse use, which is why the amendment is required. In 2020, council approved a temporary use zoning bylaw amendment for the subject property for a period of 1 year. Council then granted an additional year, which meant that the temporary use zoning bylaw expired on March 18th, 2022. That temporary use zoning bylaw has expired, and that means that a new temporary use zoning bylaw application is required to permit the warehouse use on the subject property. The original application was opposed on the grounds that a regional distribution center project was in the works that would house the warehouse that ISC required, and permitting the temporary use at 69 7th Avenue could impede that process. Discussions were had at the time that indicated that the partnership was still being discussed and the terms finalized. And so council permitted the temporary use zoning bylaw as a solution in the meantime. As of now, the proposed regional distribution center plans have not been finalized, which is why Indigenous Services Canada has reapplied for a temporary use zoning bylaw amendment. This would continue the warehouse use for 3 years. The subject property has 100 meters of lot frontage on 7th Avenue, which is an open municipally maintained road. The subject property has a lot area of 4,168 square meters. The existing building on the subject property has been retrofitted to accommodate the warehouse use, but the internal layout of individual rooms has been maintained, meaning that the building can be reconverted back to multi-residential use following the discontinuation of the warehouse. The proposed temporary use bylaw is consistent with the provincial policy statement, which encourages a mix of uses to be provided to meet long-term community needs, encourages efficient and cost-effective development patterns, land consumption and servicing costs, and directs most growth to settlement areas. The subject property is located in the urban Sioux Lookout settlement area and is serviced already with municipal water and sewer, as well as accessible by public road. The subject property is located in the urban Sioux Lookout settlement area and is designated residential in the official plan. A warehouse use is not permitted in the residential designation. However, the warehouse use is to be temporary and the long-term use for the subject property is intended to be residential. The official plan includes specific policies regarding temporary uses. These include that a time limit be set, that there is not major alteration to the existing landscape, that the use is compatible with surrounding land uses, and there's no need for an extension of municipal services. Indigenous Services Canada is asking for the temporary warehouse to be permitted for 3 years. Renovations to the existing building are generally in the interior and can be reversed. The subject property is located directly across the road from the old zone hospital where the use was previously located, and an extension of municipal services is not required. Land use compatibility is also addressed, as it is recognized that the original operation was directly across the road at the old zone hospital. And so staff do not anticipate any increase in traffic on 7th Avenue. The subject property contains the existing building and parking, and so the proposed use is not expected to negatively impact surrounding land uses. The subject property is located in the multiple residential zone of the zoning bylaw. A warehouse is not a permitted use in that zone, which is why the amendment is required to permit the warehouse as a temporary use for 3 years. The long-term use of the subject property is to be residential. No comments have been received regarding this application. It is our understanding that the applicant is actively working to secure a permanent location for the warehouse operation. It is also our understanding that discussions are still underway between the applicant and the Regional Distribution Center Group regarding the RDC proposal, but no decision has been made at this time, and to our knowledge, no agreement has been made. From a land use planning perspective, there is a policy basis to support the proposed use through a temporary use bylaw similar to what was passed previously. It is staff's opinion that the application is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms generally to the official plan, and so staff are recommending that council approve the temporary use zoning bylaw amendment.
Thank you. Correspondence from government agencies and municipal staff to be read out by the planning coordinator.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, we have not received any comments from government agencies or municipal staff.
The planning coordinator will read out any correspondence from members of the public.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, we have not received any comments regarding the application from members of the public.
Thank you. The applicant or representative is invited to speak to the application. Is there a representative who wishes to speak to the application here? I know there's representatives. Does anybody wish to speak? Yeah, please.
Sorry, Mayor Lawrence, Grant Havelsrud, representative from Indigenous Services Canada.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so we thank you for the opportunity to bring this forward. Again, this is a temporary use process, as Kristen had mentioned. It is temporary in nature. The building has been retrofitted in such a manner that we can put it back to residents when we have the opportunity to move out. As everyone is aware, the old zone hospital where the current warehouse is located is not suitable anymore for that purpose, and we're sort of at a position where we've got to move them out as quickly as possible. So we're in the process of doing that, and hopefully with your approval, we can move into that retrofitted facility in short order.
Thank you. Questions for members of council? I'll go around the table, starting with Councillor Timpson.
Yes, Mr. Havelsrud, it's the way you worded it. It sounded as if there's nothing moved in there as yet, but there's been material in there for 2 years, correct? And is there more in the old zone hospital?
So the warehouse the warehouse we're using currently is still, they're working out of the old zone hospital. There are some items located in the at 69 7th Avenue just as a storage area. It's not being used as a warehouse at this point.
Oh, I see. So it's different types of items that you're talking about. I don't know what kind of items they are. Are they machines? Are they medicinal? Are they medicines? Are they PPE?
So it's all manner of items required to service the healthcare needs of the First Nation health centers along the coastline, or in the area, I should say.
Yeah, and you don't have any idea when you'll be able to find another location for it. I'm just thinking, I mean, every time I drive by there, my heart breaks because that's such a perfect residence for agency nurses, for example, that come here, and new people coming to work at the hospital. Any idea at all on a timeline?
Not at this point.
2 years already, and yeah. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cassidy.
Thanks. I'm kind of at a similar spot I think I was the last time this came up is regard to moving forward with this for the duration that's proposed. I'm not in favor of the 3 years. I know it was probably applied for because I think that's the maximum you can apply for under temporary use. But we're using a large, well-located piece of multi-residential land adjacent to a hospital that's having staffing struggles. And I have concerns. It looks like some of the construction on this building just wrapped up late this winter on the exterior. So for something that was supposed to be used as a warehouse for how long, and you're just seeing the construction finish up on it recently, now we're looking at 3 years. Well, now that's 5 years since this first came to council. And I don't hear any progress of any meaningful dialogue for this regional distribution center. I would be in favor of deferring this until we can get an actual update on where that sits and what the long-term goal of ISC is here. I think a distribution or a warehouse should be located, especially if it's to service the north, that should be located at the airport. So where's our plan forward here? How are we going to make this work? If there's a way we can help you, we'll help you. But we got to know your plan. We got to know where you want to go and how we can get there. So I'm in favor of deferring this until we can get a little more information on the status of the long term of where this warehouse will go, so we can look at opening this multi-residential land up sooner. Thank you.
Well, I think you asked some questions there. So is the applicant prepared to answer those?
I don't have any insight into the negotiations that have taken place previously, but essentially my understanding is that the partners that were involved previously are not they've stalled to a certain extent, and that leaves us in a position of having to find a relocation for that warehouse as quickly as we can. Speaking to his point of the construction having just finished, that's correct. We just finalized everything. There was a few issues we found as we were going through construction with respect to asbestos mitigation efforts. So we had to undertake that. There was a number of slowdowns just because of COVID. When as we're going into construction, we're going into those issues as well. So.
Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Cassidy? That's it.
I guess so. How has your system been operating then? If you guys are really just getting in there, how have you been operating? You've been operating out of the zone hospital really for the last 2 years, even with this zoning bylaw or the zoning amendment in place, or the temporary use in place?
Correct. Sorry, yeah, that's correct. Out of the old zone hospital, and we've been looking to move out for a while into that new space, but had to put it off until the construction was finished. And at this point, another winter isn't practical just because of heating and the state of that facility.
I guess my question for you then would be, when this initially came to council, the request came under the premise that we can no longer operate at the zone hospital. We need this now. And then we had 2 years of construction, I guess, even after that. So what's the, I guess, what's the plan for the zone hospital then? Is it just operationally the facility is crumbling, or is there plans to shut it down? I'm just kind of curious here to understand the situation a little better.
Is there a second? Ms. Flynn, is that you'd like to respond? Yeah, you're with, please state your name and position. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Lawrence. I'm Valerie Flynn. I'm the director for the operations, and of which part of Sioux Lookout sits within my portfolio with the Indigenous Services Canada Department. So just adding to some of the challenge that we have had in the former zone hospital. That space for many years has been slated for decommission. Part of our conversations have also been working with Sioux First Nation and also with the Sioux Lookout First Nations Health Authority around the next steps and components for that particular campus. So we've been having those discussions. As Grant mentioned, the partners who back in 2019 that were pursuing the regional distribution center, that has changed. And so at this time, we need to reignite those conversations to try and determine if they are proceeding, if there is still interest in Indigenous Services Canada being part of that distribution center. Those conversations in 2019, it was suggested that the department may be the primary tenant of those spaces. And therefore, that is why there was a shorter term solution that was sought from Sioux Lookout. We have been using that, the current building that is before you right now, to store some of the supplies that are not necessarily temperature sensitive. So it's not that the building has not been used. And then within the former zone hospital, for most of you, you certainly appreciate how old that building is, the kind of heating system. And this year, we had one of the boilers that has had what we call catastrophic failure. There is no bringing it back. So that is what has brought us to needing to move the entirety of the warehouse operation over. As Grant mentioned, we cannot remain in that building for another period during the cold weather. I hope that helps just clarify.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy?
No, I think that does. Thank you very much. I guess my question, and then it kind of ties back to where the distribution center talks went. So if talks don't reignite, if things continue to stall, I guess this kind of comes into what ISC's plan is going forward. Like, will you be considering approaching the town just on your own to look at developing something at the airport, or what other options would you be considering going forward?
So it's a very good question, and it is something that we have to work within our system and structure, which is working within the public works. They look at various feasibility studies and options for us. So that certainly would be a piece that we need to indicate, depending on the decision here, the time period that we have to explore these particular types of options. And then once the public works has prepared their options, then we would be returning to present some potential solutions for consideration. At this point in time, I could not speak for what Public Works would explore for a warehouse site, if they would consider the airport, or if they would consider another structure within the existing hospital complex. I'm not certain.
Thank you. I appreciate the honesty there. That's good. I'll leave it there, Mayor Lawrence, and share the floor with the rest of the council.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. Councillor Fenelon?
Yes, I think when we first did this, I thought anyways that we would be back again at the same table here. And I know that through other things that they have had a lot of problems within that work site there. So I don't know. My idea is to give them another term and let it go from there.
Thank you. Councillor Lego?
Yeah, so the building is owned by them. To get that building back to having apartments would be a major overhaul. For me, I would say I would be comfortable with a 2-year extension. And hopefully by then some more talks happen or someone else comes to the table to get this distribution center going. Everything's a slow process. COVID halted everything with the government and with everybody else. So I'm willing to, for myself, a 2-year extension. And I understand that the old zone hospital is no longer functional. I know people that work there. So it's important that they get out and they have a place to have a facility and storage and to get out of the old zone hospital. And hopefully at some point that can get demolished, and then we'll have a big chunk of property to hopefully develop something else in the future. So I would be good with 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bath.
Yeah, I kind of echo Councillor Lego's points. I don't want to see us not approve it, but on the other hand, I just don't want to see it drag on and on and on. Somehow we need to put some fire under the system to get rid of the old zone hospital. It's an eyesore. You only need to look at the the chimney that's standing there. One day it's just not going to be standing there anymore, and it's become a danger. I think we need to put a bit of a fire to get that going. And so I'm willing to extend one more time, probably, but I think we need to be a little bit firm that something has to happen. It seems too easy just to keep dragging your feet, and there's nothing's really happening. There's been a terrific amount of money go into the building as a warehouse, the renovations of it. It's certainly, we don't want to see it not be used. So I'm okay to extend it once more.
Thank you. Once again, I find myself agreeing with everything the council said, but I have, my comment would be, and because I agree with everybody, that we approve a 1-year extension at this time, and we could consider a further extension at a meeting to be held, and I'm going to say 8 months from now, at which time ISC comes back, applies for the further 2 years if they need it, but also reveals the plan. It gives you 8 months to put a plan in place to have an RDC and get out of the temporary use of this building, because this is a temporary use. Temporary is now, if we granted this, would become 5 years of temporary use, which exceeds our temporary use bylaw by 2 years. Understanding the reasons why, you've explained that quite well, but I think we need to use whatever pressure we can to get some forward progress here, not just talk about planning, but do the planning and put something firm in place to be out of there in 3 years. So I'm not sure if this is possible in the motion to say 1 year to be extended further after a meeting with ISC, the same group, in 2 years, at which time, in 8 months, at which time the plans for getting out of the temporary use are explained, where the RDC will be, etc. Put that on the table. I think I saw Councillor Timpson, you put your hand up again.
Yeah, just to clarify, I'm just not sure what retrofits has happened now. I mean, have you done some renovations or on the building to be suitable as a warehouse, or has there been something done to ameliorate the water damage that happened that created it to be that caused it to be empty? Can you just explain to me what exactly has been done, because I didn't quite get that.
Sure. So we've done exactly that. Both items address the issue, the water damage that's been done to the building. There was issues with asbestos as well that we've mitigated on the first floor. The second floor has not been addressed. There was a mold, obviously, from the water damage, mold mitigation that we had to undergo as well to address, and then essentially ensuring that I think we put a couple of rooms together in one section just to accommodate a larger space for larger items. But essentially the main areas are as pretty much as they were, just addressing the water damage, the mold damage, and obviously the asbestos that had to be removed.
Okay, so once that you no longer need it as storage, we won't have to do anything more to make it suitable for residents then?
Well, like I said, the second floor still has to be
Okay.
addressed. Yeah, with respect to
Okay,
asbestos.
can we have some guarantee that that work would carry on? While it is a warehouse, because we don't have to, I'd hate to see you move out in a year, but we have to wait another year in order for it to be residences.
I wouldn't be in a position to make that kind of commitment.
What we can commit to is adding that into the public works discussions that we will have to enter into for the next 8 months to gain the plan. Planning for projects such as that is usually a year in advance. So it would be something that we could certainly take back and add that into the planning discussion.
I think that's essential to do, because our housing situation here is critical, and particularly in healthcare. And it's the faster we can get that apartment house back in business, the better off the hospital is going to be. So I would like to see that planning happening right now, as soon as possible, rather. But I will go for another year. I think there's really no, that I don't think there's any option, but we have to go. I wouldn't go for 2 years, but I would go for 1 year. And as the mayor suggested, planning meeting in a few months to update and to look how we're going forward with this. And that's all I need to say right now. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll go back to council in a moment. I'm not sure whether I asked development services manager or planning coordinator clerk. Is it possible to amend the motion in the format that I suggested before I ask council if they're willing?
Mayor Lawrence, many things are possible, yes. So essentially what we would do is if there is a desire to move this initiative forward this evening to council to approve the request, we would note the changes to the bylaw that council is requesting, which would be potentially, as opposed to a 3-year temporary use bylaw, it would be a 1 or 2 year temporary use bylaw, depending on what council ultimately decides. We would then add a second component to the motion that would speak to council's request of ISC to come back to the table in approximately 8 months to provide an update on future plans for a warehouse solution, whether that be in conjunction with a regional distribution center or whether that be other options that Public Works and Government Services Canada come up with for ISC. That would be my recommendation.
Thank you. So, council, what I'm going to ask, and you can tell me if you don't agree with this, then we'll go back to the motion that is on the table in the report. I'm going to suggest that council approve 1 year with the consideration for 2 further years, dependent on what comes of a meeting to be held in 8 months with this same group, at which time plans are revealed. And then council can consider whether, depending on the depth and breadth and commitment of the plans and the time frame, could consider extending for a further 2 years if necessary. That's the gist of what I'd like to propose. Council, would you be in favor of me grinding staff through that? I realize for staff, it means that there's another meeting in 1 year, not 2 years. I'm making more workload for staff, but I think this is an opportunity for us to wield whatever influence we have to move this forward. It's been a long time. Council, head nods, is that okay with you, that general approach? Councillor Timpson?
Well, I think adding the provision of another 2 years is possible. I don't think we can do that. I think we have to stick.
No, consider it. I'm not saying it's council could consider. So the applicant has asked for 3 years tonight. We're considering 3 years, but we're willing to firmly say 1 year, and we'll consider another 2 years depending on the results of a report in 8 months. That's, it's not saying you would get it at all, Councillor Timpson, that we would necessarily grant it, but we have very little pressure we can apply to the federal government. We are very small. This might be a pressure point to try to move things forward a little bit faster.
Sorry, was the request for 3 years or for 1 year? I thought it was just for 1 year.
I
Right,
believe it was
did I
for
read that wrong?
3 years. Any further comments, Councillor Lego, on my proposal?
Oh, no, I'm okay with the 1 year and come back in 8 months with ISC having some form of plan moving forward. And if not, then we debate again whether we give them another extension in a year from now. So
I see we're going to get some advice from the planning coordinator. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor Lawrence. Through you, I don't want to confuse anybody, make things more complicated than they are. I just did want to clarify very quickly the temporary use bylaw and how that works. Just so council is aware, regardless of the decision made tonight or potentially in a couple of years, the applicant can always come back to council to request up to 3 years for a temporary use bylaw. So even if council decides to approve 1 year, revisit in a year, and potentially give 2 years, just so you're aware, ISC could then come back in 3 years and apply again for another 1 to 3 years. So I just want to clarify that process for everybody so that it's clear.
Thanks. And can they do that repeatedly? So let's say council approved 3 years, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 years later, we could be, if council approved to the max 3 years. Okay, thank you.
For you, Mayor Lawrence, yes, under the Planning Act legislation, it is technically indefinite.
Thank you. Councillor Fenelon.
I agree with what you're trying to do is put the pressure on the other government forms to come up with a solution. But I don't know. I'd like to see it continue on for 2 years, and with your suggestion at the 1 year.
So you'd like us to grant 2 years now and
yeah, within a year have a solution to an ending.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cassidy.
I agree with your approach as well, Mayor Lawrence. I think even I almost think even pressuring is the wrong word here. We gotta figure out how we can move forward with this, and you know, if there's something that you guys comes forward out of your public works report or whatnot, having a sit down at the table where we can have some dialogue over how we can help you and how we can move on to this. And I think the end goal here is finding ISC a permanent home for this warehouse in Sioux Lookout, as well as opening that spot back up for multi-residential housing and get some nurses and some medical professionals in there. It's much needed in this town right now. So I think those are our goals. And I think there's an opportunity for us to come together in 8 months and figure that out. So I'm in support of that.
Thank you. Councillor Bath.
Yeah, I support your proposal, Mayor Lawrence.
All right, ISC reaction, comments. Grant to Valerie, I'm not sure who's.
I'll leave that to Valerie if she doesn't mind.
Valerie, go ahead.
Thank you very much. No, I very much appreciate it, and absolutely, we are committed to come back to you in 8 months for that discussion and for that update. I certainly won't make any statement or comment about what that study will find, but we will request it and be able to share that openly with you in terms of timelines and location options.
Thank you. So unless, but we can have further discussion of, I'm going to turn to the clerk for a possible wording for a motion. Is it premature or? Please.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, thank you. Yes, so on page 6 of the agenda package, where the motion currently, option 1 currently sits, I would recommend adding to the second paragraph that talks about the passing of the bylaw, that we add one more paragraph there that would read that council asks that ISC make a presentation to council in 8 months to outline its plans for a warehouse solution and for the cessation of the temporary use of the property at 69 7th Avenue as a warehouse.
So you're not specifying 1 year, 2 year, 3 years in there?
Well, I thought that we didn't want to tie future decisions with respect. The bylaw is going to be amended so that it'll be a 1 year grant. Right now,
Good.
the bylaw
No,
is
that's-
free. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, if the bylaw remained as 3, then there's little impetus to push ISC to get it. It could be delayed. The 8 months could become 18 months or whatever. But if it's 1, then there's reason for ISC to return in 8 months. Good. All right, so that will be the motion we're heading for. And is there anything further from council? Are there any members of the public are invited to speak to the application? The public can ask questions of clarification or seek background information, speak in support of the application or speak in opposition to the application. All questions will be directed through the chair. It is requested that only one question be asked at a time. Please identify yourself before you ask your question so that you can be properly recorded in the minutes of the public meeting. Are there any members of the public present who wish to speak? Seeing or hearing none, clerk? Yep.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, we did not receive any notification of public wishing to speak to this application. I don't see anyone in attendance. So.
And as you usually do, you're going to make me go through the next section as well for completeness, or yes, thank you. This concludes the public meeting regarding zoning bylaw amendment number Z04-2022. If any member of the public wishes to be notified of the decision of council in respect of the application, you must make a written request to the planning coordinator. Notice to appeal the decision to council to the Ontario Land Tribunal must be filed with the planning coordinator no later than 20 days from the date the notice of the decision is circulated. The notice of appeal shall be sent to the attention of the planning coordinator, and it must include the following information: the reasons for the appeal and the fee as prescribed under the Ontario Land Tribunal Act in the amount of $1,100 payable by certified check to the Minister of Finance, Province of Ontario. Only individuals, corporations, or public bodies may appeal the decision of council to the Ontario Land Tribunal. An appeal may not be filed by an unincorporated association or group. A notice of appeal may be filed in the name of an individual who was a member of the association or group. And the motion. I'm going to ask the clerk to read the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lawrence. The motion reads. The council receives the planning report dated May 18th, 2022, respecting zoning bylaw amendment number Z04-2022. And further, that council authorizes the passing of bylaw number 29-22, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 85-18, being a comprehensive zoning bylaw for the corporation, for the corporation of the municipality of Sioux as amended, ISC 69 7th Ave. Although this isn't part of the resolution, again, just for clarification, that bylaw before it is signed tomorrow morning will be amended so that it's a 1 year grant of a temporary use as opposed to a 3 year grant of a temporary use. And further, getting back to the motion, the council asks that ISC make a presentation to council in 8 months to outline its plans for a warehouse solution and for the cessation of the temporary use of the property at 69 7th Avenue as a warehouse.
Thank you. A mover? Mover for the bylaw, Councillor Fenelon, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. Any final discussion, council? See none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Bylaw number 34-2022, confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation Municipality of Sioux Lookout. May 18th, 2022, statutory public meeting be read a first, second, and third time and passed. Moved by Councillor Lego, seconded by Councillor Fanlon. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Thanks, ISC, for your presentation and attendance. And you'll work out the dates with CAO for the 8 months hence meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that concludes, that's the adjournment of the statutory public meeting, and we'll move to the regular council meeting. Are we leaving this meeting, clerk, or how are we getting there?
So you, Mayor Lawrence, just a virtual turn of the page, if you will, to the council meeting agenda.
Very good. And perhaps would it be acceptable just before we call the meeting to order to take, we've been at it just a short break before we start, 5-minute break, and we'll start at 5 to 7. Thank you. That would be great. Thanks. You are hearing me? I thought we said let's reappear. It's not working anymore, darn. Yeah, and I think Councillor Timpson, are you back yet?
I'm back.
Sorry, you're there? There you are. Okay, thanks. You look like you just came out from a good swim. Well done. All right, Council, I will call the regular council meeting of May the 18th to order at 6:56 p.m. And as I do, I will acknowledge that we are on the traditional land and the traditional water of the Sioux First Nation. And many of the people we serve come from Treaties 5 and 9. The Anishinaabe Athkien Nation, and we're in Treaty 3. And water is a theme here. And staff have asked me, as part of my introductory comments, to read a media release that we have put out. So this will be my introductory comments regarding an update on the high water levels in Sioux Lookout. The municipality of Sioux Lookout is taking action to protect people and property as water levels continue to rise. The pedestrian bridge at the Travel Information Center has been blocked off at both ends, and we are asking people to avoid the area at this time. Public Works Operations Manager Matt Lalonde, that was Jeff Hawley, our Public Works Infrastructure Managers, noted that. Matt Lalonde adds, we are working directly with residents impacted by flooding in low-lying areas and are providing targeted support. Lakeshore Drive is being sandbagged as the water is now level with the road, and I can tell you it's over the road when I came in this evening by a few inches. A section of Ethel Street is also closed with water over due to water over the road at the far east end. Sturgeon River Road had a small washout at the culvert past the hotels. We have temporarily repaired the culvert and both lanes are open again. We continue to monitor closely, but it will likely be closed later today. The municipality is prepared to deal with increasing water levels with a large number of sandbags on hand to respond to changing conditions. We have also been successful in securing additional sandbags for use by residents to protect their properties. Residents wishing to pick up empty sandbags to protect their properties may visit our Public Works office from 7:30 a.m. until noon and from 1 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday to Friday. Sandbags can be filled at the 3rd Avenue Ball Diamonds, where sand will be available at no cost. To date, there are no indications that highway access to the community will be cut off, as we have seen in other parts of Northwestern Ontario. Staff continue to monitor the situation and will take proactive measures where necessary. The municipality of Sioux Lookout is working with the province to have the municipality designated a flood area. If the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing declares Sioux Lookout a flood area, individuals may be eligible for the province's disaster mitigation relief funding, the Disaster Recovery Assistance for Ontarians program, DRANO. Details are available at https://www.ontario.ca/page/apply-disaster-recovery-assistance. And that information is available in the media release. Those seeking funding will need to apply directly to the province, but first exhaust any insurance coverage they are entitled to. We will update the public if the minister makes this declaration. In the meantime, it would be helpful to know how many property owners have suffered damage to their principal residence or business. Please contact the municipality to share this information at 737-2700 during regular business hours. You may also email customer service@siouxlookout.ca to share your information. With walleye season opening on Saturday, many are wondering about the status of the municipality's public boat launches. Staff are monitoring the situation daily, and the docks will be put in as soon as it is safe to do so in each location. Currently, docks are installed or will be installed by the end of the day, Friday, May 20th, at the following locations: Boat Bay, Bottoms Bay, Deception Bay, Sturgeon River, and West Hudson. The boat launches at Superior Junction are accessible, but the water is extremely high. The ramps are underwater. These locations are to be used at your own risk only. The 5-mile boat launch is extremely unsafe at the moment and should not be used. The ramp is underwater and the secondary ramp is unavailable as the dock is currently tied up and floating in that area. Water has also entered into the parking area. Water levels at West Point Cove are also extremely high, and the docks are in but barricaded off for safety reasons. Water levels have reached the end of the ramp, but it is still possible to launch from West Point Cove. Extreme caution is urged when using this location. The municipality of Sioux Lookout will advise when boat launch passes will be available. Once available, passes may be purchased at the front desk of the recreation center or from various businesses in the area. A list of vendors can be found at siouxlookout.ca under Explore the Hub, Boating and Fishing. There has also been concern expressed about the appearance of fuel entering the water along Wellington Street. The Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks has been in discussion with business owners in the area and is satisfied that the mitigation measures implemented by the business owners are appropriate and adequate, with no reason for concern at this time. So in some areas, some members of the public have asked if the municipality will be declaring a state of emergency. And at this time, we are not. We declare a state of emergency based on the danger of damage to municipal infrastructure. And at this time, it's not at the level where we could declare a state of emergency. But that has no impact, whether we declare or not, on individual residents' eligibility for assistance through the Drano program. What does impact that is the minister has to decide if they're going to declare Sioux Lookout a flood area or not. And CAO and staff are working hard to try and make that happen, to try and influence that, to try and have it happen. But it's there's a lot of effort, and we will be hopefully finding out in coming days. CAO, did you want to add anything to that?
Just a brief highlight, thank you through you, Mayor Lawrence. As of this afternoon, Sturgeon River Road was closed off because the water had gone over the road. So I would say it was about maybe 4 o'clock this afternoon. They put barricades up on that section of road. So people have to go around in order to access Sturgeon Road. And just a note on the situation with the DRAO program for residents. I was told today by Municipal Affairs that it could take up to 2 weeks because they have to bring people into the community to assess the damage to property owners to determine whether or not they will make a recommendation to the minister to have our area designated as a flood area. So we are working really hard to have them come as soon as possible so that people can start making applications if we are designated as a flood area. Thank you.
Thanks, CAO. And my advice to some of the residents I've spoken to is to photo document what's happening to you with digital photography, which has dates and times on it, and keep photo documenting as the water rises. Photo document the damage and the impact, on the overall property and on specific parts of your primary residence. Councillor Timpson, comment? Go ahead.
I just wondered if there's any projection as to how high the water is going to get. Is it a result of the rain or the excessive snow, or just what is the thinking around that? Does anybody know what can we expect in the next week?
CAO, have you heard any? I mean, I can say what I've heard, but CAO, anything from?
It's speculation at this point as far as staff goes. Perhaps. Or I don't want to put our fire chief on the spot, but perhaps he may have more information through his discussions today with PIOC and others. But speaking to our public works staff today, they estimate that it probably could go up at least another foot.
Emergency services manager, have you heard anything recently?
Sorry about that. I've been talking to M&R, and there is nothing in that they have any information as to what the levels will be doing. So other than watching and monitoring it, okay. It's an uncontrolled lake. Further down the watershed, the Lac Sioux is controlled by the Lake of the Woods Control Board. So other than that, they have no speculation or estimate as to what the levels are going to do.
Thank you. And CAO, yes, further comment?
Okay.
No. Yeah, I'm been monitoring because I go down to my dock and trying to protect my dock every day, and been spending a lot of time on the water. I'm not quite as red as I look. I know I'm windburned and sunburned from the lake being down there. But it's been rising steadily. The rate of rise slowed, I would say, in the last few days, but not stopped. It's still rising inches daily, and it may have picked up again today. I'm not sure. I'll see tomorrow, but anticipated to continue rising for a while. But as predictions are hard to come by. Who would have anticipated, based on the tinder dry, extreme low lake levels last year, that this is where we would be at today? It's remarkable. Our heart goes out to people. I know some people have already had to leave their homes in Sioux Lookout. Our heart goes out to them. I know staff are working to try and get sandbags to. It's a little bit. Some of it's a little bit of a thumb in the dike. There's not much holding back when the whole lake wants to come in. But members of the public, if you're in trouble, don't hesitate to reach out to the municipality for assistance, and we can do whatever we can. All right, with that said, we will move to the regular council meeting. Introduction of amendments to the agenda. Clerk?
To you, Mayor Lawrence, based on the outcome of the preceding statutory public meeting, I believe council will wish to add the following items. So the first will be item 7.7, the IFNA zoning bylaw application number Z03 2022. And as well in that section, item 7.8, the ISC zoning bylaw application number Z03 2022 respecting the temporary use bylaw. Additionally, under section 10 bylaws, bylaw number 28-22 and bylaw number 29-22 would be added as they also relate to those two applications.
Thank you. May I have a motion that the agenda for the regular council meeting of May 18 be approved as amended? Moved by Councillor Timpson, seconded by Councillor Fenelon. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Declarations of pecuniary interest.
To you, Mayor Lawrence, I have.
Thank you. Adoption of minutes, none. Determination of items requiring separate discussion. Item 7.1, personnel policies. Councillor Timpson. Item 7.2, municipal accommodation tax funding criteria. Councillor Timpson. Item 7.3, review of municipal levies with reference to Sioux Lookout residents in long-term care. I will lift that. If nobody else, it'll be lifted. Thank you. Award contract for HVAC upgrades at the Centennial Center. See none. Application to the CCTV grant program. 7.5. Councillor Timpson. 7.6, Ukraine Sister City Agreement. We'll lift that as there are blanks to be filled in if it proceeds. 7.7, IFNA zoning bylaw. 7.8, ISC zoning bylaw. So the lifted items are 7.1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. A motion to adopt the items not requiring separate discussion, items 7.4, 7.7, and 7.8. Moved by Councillor Lego, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And we'll move on to staff reports. Item 7.1, personnel policies. The council authorizes the passing of bylaw numbers 27-22, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 50-05, being a bylaw to adopt personnel policies for the corporation of the municipality of Sioux Lookout, to add policy number 3-57, disconnecting from work. Moved by Councillor Fenelon, seconded by Councillor Timpson, and discussion starting with Councillor Timpson.
Yeah, I've never seen a policy like this, so this is quite interesting. I have a couple of comments, and I would like to suggest that the word encourage be stronger, given the seriousness of this issue that we're developing a policy, that instead of something like encourage, we say staff are expected to disconnect from work. If you understand what I'm trying to say, is that it's a bit too soft, I think. And I think part 4 to 7 on the policy, it wasn't. I think I know what you're trying to say. You're basically saying that this doesn't apply if it's in your contract to be available, to be on call, and it just was. It seemed to be very confusing what it meant there, and I would suggest that be simplified. And number 6. Was it number 6 seemed to be seem to be, if that could be written in less legalistic language, like when I read it, and I was just a little bit confused about whether you really were supposed to disconnect from work or not. It just was confusing. I know what you're trying to say, but I also say too, what about the CAO? The CAO is not mentioned in there, and I would think that that should apply to the CAO as well. However, given that the CAO is the chief administrative officer, there might have to be some sorts of protocols or line of communication for contacting the CAO, so it's not just something that's really necessary. So I support the policy, but I would like to see those changes made to make it stronger and more clear, and to include something for it about the CAO there.
CAO, can I ask the staff want to discuss any or all of that?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I'll defer to Megan to respond to Councillor Timpson.
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, regarding the CAO being included in this policy, she is technically the only employee who is exempt under the actual act. Anyone who's an executive level employee is not considered to have specific hours of work where they are not to respond if that's the anticipated expectation. Regarding the number 4, where it lists out the employee's ability to disconnect from work regarding operational needs and duties and obligations, basically it comes down to, it's in the collective agreement and in the policy number 3-02 that very specifically spell out our hours of work. I can put them in this policy, but should anything change regarding hours to work, then that would have to be updated at another time.
Councillor Timpson?
Yeah, I just think that 4 to 7 could be clearer. And I do think we have to, I don't think it's proper to exempt the CAO from this, because they're the engine of rather the conductor of the engine, or the engineer of the train, and we have to protect them as well.
But I think, Councillor Timpson, it's the act that exempts them. We can't supersede the act, and that we can introduce that through our contract with the CAO, if you like. I think that would be the place where we would introduce it. Councillor Timpson, does that sound reasonable?
Well,
I think the HR manager said we can't do it here because the act says.
Yeah, well, except that this is our policy. We're not changing any law. This is a policy that we're introducing. Why can't we just put in what we want to put in? So really,
clerk, please go ahead.
You, Mayor Lawrence, yeah. So the policy is being developed as a requirement of the legislation. It's not necessarily a policy that, like another type of personnel policy that we would develop, that would be based on our unique needs and requirements here in Sioux Lookout, but rather it's a requirement of the legislation that this policy be developed. And further, and please, HR manager, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the legislation is somewhat prescriptive in terms of the types of things that need to be included and excluded from the policy. So in some ways, Councillor Timpson, you can think about this similar to when we were required to adopt a tree canopy policy. It seemed a bit strange that here we are in the middle of the boreal forest and needed to adopt a tree canopy policy, but the province said thou shall, and as such we were required to. So some of our policies obviously are very Sioux Lookout centric and based on our specific needs and wants and desires and expectations of our staff. Others are created in response to specific legislative requirements, and this one is one of the latter.
But does it say we have to exempt the CAO?
I don't have the legislation in front of me right now. I'd have to read the specific act to see whether it says that CAOs shall be exempt or may. I would have to double check the wording of the legislation.
Yeah.
HR
So
manager, did you have, sorry, are you aware?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I actually don't have it in front of me either to say if it shall or may. I believe that so this policy was drafted through a template that I received from Hicks and Morley that would address specifically making it encompass as many people as possible within an employment within an employer without specifically having to change any of the other current policies or employment contracts, that it would just reference them, which is what I tried to do with this policy, is just reference those things so that if they wanted to be adjusted down the road, it wouldn't have to be the policy, it would be the specific contract. So, you know, as we have the CAO now with her contract, down the road, there may be somebody else that wants different types of working hours that would be negotiated in their contract, and that way this wouldn't have to be updated.
I'll let you ponder for a while, Councillor Timpson, come back. Do any other councillors have comments on? Councillor Lego.
I'm fine the way it's written. So it's a legislative requirement. It's due on June 2nd. So I have no issue with what's in it.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy, comments?
No, I'm fine with the way it is as well. It's check the box, get it done there. And I think if we want to sit here and look at some of the wording, I don't know how we're gonna actively encourage or expect someone I just don't know. I think the intent's there. This is disconnect from work. You're allowed to, and I think it's fine. So,
Councillor Bath.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I have no comment.
So Councillor Timpson suggested some wording requirements. I know sometimes some minor wording can be fine tuned, even though we're approving the. Is there anything that you heard from Councillor Timpson that you would could incorporate, or you're fine with it the way it is, HR manager?
From 4 till 7, number 4 till 7, where it was very, you know, kind of legalistic, and I think that if that could be condensed to basically what it means is that if it's in your contract that you have to be on call or you have to be available, then you can't, you're exempt at that particular point. But it just seems very roundabout to me, and it almost negates the whole idea of it, that we want people to disconnect from work. We're only encouraging them to, but you don't have to when it's in your contract. I mean, it's just, I'd like to see it just fairly straightforward and stronger, that's all. I think it's a great idea, a great policy. Clearer and stronger.
So between the clerk and the HR manager, how do we proceed here? I mean, I could just call the vote, and I see there's a majority that are saying pass it. But are there any concerns that Councillor Timpson's raised that could be addressed without having to bring it back to the table? Clerk.
Through Mayor Lawrence, I would suggest that I certainly appreciate Councillor Timpson's comments, and certainly given that this is a personnel policy that applies to the employees of the municipality, we absolutely want to understand, like all of our policy, or we want to ensure, like all of our policies, that our employees understand the meeting. And so, like the vast majority of our policies, there would be, either the HR manager or through the department heads would meet with their staff to explain specifically what these sections mean. I do agree with Councillor Timpson that despite what is written in the policy, its implementation and how employees are made to feel with respect to disconnecting from work, I think, is very much as much a policy matter as it is a work culture matter. And so I believe that the municipality understands its obligations with respect to the legislation and what we need to do. The municipality, I think, also understands that promoting a healthy work-life balance ultimately results in more productive employees and happier employees. So I feel confident that the intent of the policy will be relayed to the staff through the training and explanations that are provided by the HR manager and the department heads to the employees. I don't necessarily think specific changes are required right now. Some of the reasons some of these sounds a bit legalese is that we want to ensure that when we are explaining it to staff, that we want them to ask some of these questions, say, well, what do you mean the ESA? What do you mean the collective agreement? What parts of that do you refer to? And so that's the type of thing that we'd want to explain through training and when the policy is being rolled out. That's all I have to say, but I'll certainly defer to the CAO or HR manager for anything additional.
CAO.
I believe that the clauses should be in those clauses should all be in there, because what it does is and to echo what the clerk has already said, it specifically outlines what the requirements are for outside work, like outside of normal office hours for working, because the collective agreement, the ESA, so the employer is bound to follow those. So that's why they're in these clauses, so that everybody's on the same page and understands exactly what's required.
HR manager, any final comments?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I just I think that the clerk had it very right. This also opens up that opportunity when I'm training the staff on this policy for them to ask those questions specifically as they relate to them.
All right, thank you. Council, I think I will put this to the vote unless there's anything further. Councillor Timpson.
Can we change the word encourage to expected, would be expected? Get strong. Let's get the message out there that this is about increasing productivity at the municipality. So we expect you to be rested when you come to work, not burned out from the night before from work. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? So
Comments, stuff?
The word can be changed in the final draft of the policy, that is, if it's approved, to be a little bit more specific as far as that you're expected to disconnect from work and to take this policy seriously.
All right, with that modification, we can call the vote and that would be attended to. Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Thanks, HR manager. Item 7.3, item 7.2, municipal accommodation tax funding criteria. The council approves the municipal accommodation tax application funding criteria as per the requirements stipulated in section 2.9.3 of Schedule A to bylaw number 62-21. Mover for this, please. Moved by Councillor Timpson, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. Discussion, I'll start Councillor Timpson.
yeah, I was just wondering, I don't know who was on this committee from the municipality, but would there be a few examples we could have for the types of projects that would be applied for? It says fees paid to artists, musicians, performers, celebrities, and so on. And is that for Blueberry Festival concerts, or just if somebody could elaborate a little bit on the types of projects we might see applied for?
CIO, do you want to start or direct?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I will defer to Carly because she is our staff representative on the MAT Tax Committee.
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, a couple of items that we were taking into consideration in regards to that line were in regards to the fact that the Sioux Lookout Anti-Racism Committee puts together their music festival every year. So we wanted to include some sort of line where organizations could apply if they wanted to bring in a certain type of musician or let's say a comedian, or depending on what is going on with the community community that year, they could bring in sort of special artists to help promote Sioux Lookout and to help promote their event.
These are all generalized concepts. There's no applications at this time.
No.
So it's pretty open to what it could be. It could be a small organization applying for a concert, or it could be sort of beautification sort of things. Anything that would be related to tourism and very broad. It's very broad then, is it?
Through Mayor Lawrence, that is correct. We wanted to keep the application very simple, very kind of easy to understand, but in a way that both larger and smaller organizations here in town can apply for a whole variety of different things that would improve the community and bring people here for all sorts of different types of items.
Okay, thanks. That's great. No, that's good.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy.
I'm okay with this approach, and I'm happy to see it moving forward. So,
thank you, Councillor Fenlon.
I have no comment on it. I think it's a good place to start.
Thank you, Councillor Lego.
And so what I'm seeing here, this means that we're a lot closer to paying off that $600,000 for the waterfront. It's going fast, so it looks good.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, that is correct.
Good. Councillor Bath.
That's one reason I also like it. I think it's nice to keep it very simple and broad, so people we get a lot of applications. So yeah, I'm in favor of the way it is.
Great. Good to see it going forward. Unless there's anything else, so I will call the vote. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Treasurer. 7.3, review of municipal levies with reference to Sioux Lookout residents in long-term care. The council accept this report for information purposes. Moved by Councillor Lego, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. And maybe I'll start off the discussion by saying you can see in the report the trend line is that some 30 years ago, 90% of the residents, so 18 out of 20 were at Sioux Lookout Hudson addresses. And now if the percentage is absolutely correct, it would be from 18 down to 8 out of the local population. And that may be less because the address that's assigned to some of the northern people is if they were in hospital for alternative level care, then the hospital, I think, became their address. It's, if anything, it's less than, I think it's more like the 5 to 6 residents. But the trend line is there. And then the other trend line is on the costs. They are forever going up, as one would anticipate. But the issue being that the taxpayers paying that levies, access to long-term care is going down. When the 20 beds were established for a population of about 6,000, the per thousand beds per thousand would have been 3.33, doing the math, 20 over 6,000. Now, if there are 6 over 6,000, do the math, then it's 1 per thousand. So we have declined our rate. The provincial average is, in fact, even at 3.33, we're half the provincial average. The provincial average, if you take all the long-term care beds in Ontario, divided by the total population, is something like 6.67. It's in the 6 to 7 range. So we were half at the start, and now we are less than even 1 per thousand. My suggestion is to council is that we direct staff to invite the Kenora District Homes for the Aged and Meneyawan to a council meeting to speak to this issue and how it's being addressed. Our declining access to long-term care. And the intent is more long-term care beds for our entire region. And what's our avenue in as a municipality, we can't we can't necessarily advocate for long-term care beds for communities outside of ours. We can, but directly we can for the municipality, because we're paying a levy here, and our access for the people paying the levy for access in Sioux Lookout is declining. And I would ask for an explanation of what's being done to address that to the agency that we pay the levy to, the Kenora District Homes for the Aged, and the agency that is involved in delivering long-term care in Sioux Lookout, Meneowan Health Center, as a starting point. Not trying to put them on. I'm actually trying to help them with a tool to advance getting long-term care beds for Sioux Lookout. Having said that, I'll ask for discussion from council. Councillor Timpson.
Well, I guess we'd have to get numbers of persons from our area that are in facilities outside of Sioux Lookout, for example, Dryden and Kenora. And I guess the other question I would have is, you said we're at 1.1 thousand, and the rest of Ontario is 6.6 per 1,000. Do we know what the whole Kenora district is at?
No, and that's part of what I'd like to see, and I appreciate what you said. We do have residents outside of Sioux Lookout, but that's the whole point. They have to leave Sioux Lookout, and we're speaking to these specific trend lines that we see in front of us, and inviting the Kenora District Homes for the Aged and Meneowan to talk to us about it, and tell us how many residents are outside of Sioux Lookout, and et cetera. So it's an invitation to a discussion about this to try to bring attention and help get more long-term care beds for Sioux Lookout. So the answers to those questions, perhaps we could put, if we invited them to a meeting to discuss this with, I'm sure they would come armed with some of those answers. Is that, Councillor Timpson, is that?
I'm just wondering if we could find that out ourselves before we invite them. It wouldn't be too difficult, I wouldn't think. And then we have a little bit more information when we do meet with them.
Sure. CAO?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, when I was talking to Mr. Queen from the Kenora District Home for the Aged, he has those statistics and knows where residents are in the homes, because he did indicate that we do have a few Sioux Lookout residents in the Dryden facility. So that information could probably be easily attained.
Yeah, and to Councillor Timpson's point, it would be interesting what's the access in terms of local people in Dryden having access to long-term care in Dryden, people in Kenora having access to long-term care in Kenora versus our access. Are we outliers, or are we the same as everybody else? I'll go around to any Councillor Cassidy.
No, I think it's a good approach, Mayor Lawrence. I think we got our report. We kind of know where we stand, and now we just got to take it to the next step, and at the regional level here with the Home for the Aged. So I'm good with this approach as well.
Thank you, Councillor Fenelon.
I have no comment on it. Keep moving ahead with what your predictions are right now.
I have no predictions. I can only observe what the trends are from history. But thanks, Councillor Fenelon. Councillor Lego.
Yeah, no, the data indicates 60% of people are from outside of the community, and I think that bodes well for us presenting data to the federal and provincial government, saying that you both need to chip in to fund these 76 beds. So whether they'll see it that way or not, that's a different story, but we do have the data that indicates that. So
very good. Thank you. Councillor Bath.
Yeah, I support this, having the data support to have a discussion where we're not just sort of reaching for numbers is good. I think when we get the hard data, that's great.
All right, so thank you. Then I would ask that as well as receiving the report, that council approves direction to staff to invite Meneowan and Kenora District Homes for the Aged to a meeting with council to help us understand where we're heading in terms of long-term care, the levy we pay, the access we have to it, and some of those regional matters. Clerk.
Through Mayor Lawrence, if possible, and with your approval and certainly with the concurrence of the mover, could we just add that direction to staff to the motion?
Sure.
And I would propose that council direct staff to invite the Kenora District Home for the Aged and the Sioux Lookout Minneyawan Health Center to speak to council regarding long-term care accessibility for Sioux Lookout residents.
Fine, and I'm okay with that. Mover it was
Councillor Lego.
Yep, good. And that's as far as we need to go now, just to the mover. Yep. And thank you. Good. And this is a friendly request. This isn't we're trying to haul it. This is. I'm sure they understand the situation as well, and it's all try to move together. So with that motion as amended and with the friendly amendment, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Item 7.5. The council directs staff to submit an application for funding for the installation of cameras in the downtown core under the Ontario Closed Circuit Television CCTV grant program. Moved by Councillor Fenelon, seconded by Councillor Lego, and discussion. Start with Councillor Timpson.
My question has been answered, actually. I had planned to go back to the original report in February, but I didn't get a chance. But I did find out that it would be funded through the police reserve, and I hadn't. Anyway,
Your question's answered. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just curious why we're discussing it now. Did we not approve this in February?
I think we can see you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lawrence. The reason why I did another report is because it was previously approved, but it was for the $80,000 level that we had previously discussed. So I just wanted to make council aware that I was requesting $96,000 total cost for a $48,000 contribution through the police reserve.
Any further questions or comments from council? I can go around the table, but show of hands. No comments or questions? Councillor Beth, I can't see you. Any questions?
Okay.
Good. All right. So all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And 7.6, Ukraine Sister City Agreement. The council directs staff to initiate a sister city agreement between the municipality of Sioux Lookout and a town in Ukraine, and that the agreement contain the following initiatives to be determined at the meeting. So to put that on the table, a mover. Councillor Cassidy, seconder. Councillor Timpson. And I'll just start the discussion and then go to council table. It was our MP, Eric, excuse me, Malillo, who sent an email out to us, to me, and saying that this is something that's being done. He gave the I think it's Brampton or Brantford example. Brantford example, and said that his office would help us put something together. The MP's office would help us put together something together if we would like to. And a few residents have spoken to me about initiatives to try to do something, and I thought, well, maybe it's something the municipality might be able to. By doing something like this, there may be avenues for private citizens who may wish to feel engaged and be engaged to do something. So that's where we're at. CIO, any further comments before we go to council?
I can ask questions if council has any. The report is fairly straightforward.
Okay, thank you. I hope you can answer questions, not ask them, but that's okay. Councillor Timpson.
Yeah, I found it to be fairly vague. Like, I don't know what we can say that we can do to help a little town in Ukraine. Wouldn't it be more productive if we asked some town in Ukraine, what can we do to help you now that you're in the middle of a war? you know, are they gonna, they're not, can't see them wanting youth cooperation in sports or culture at this point. You know, maybe if there was a town that was selected, could we ask them what they want, what they would need from us? Because at this point, I don't know what we could suggest.
I think the CIO can, go ahead, CIO.
So some of the conversations that we had with Eric Malillo's office staff is that it can be as broad as we want, or as definitive as we want, as to what exactly we want to, with what initiatives that we want to enter into with our sister city. This is supposed to be like a long-lasting relationship, not just because there is a war going on right now. So one of the examples is to send supplies to areas of the Ukraine that are not at war right now, or haven't been devastated by the war, to assist them, because a lot of people are being displaced and going to other cities and towns in the Ukraine to find shelter. So they need that extra assistance too. So, and also to help them out as well with anything that they need to support their fellow towns in the Ukraine. So it's not only just because of the war. It started because of the war, but it's supposed to be a long-lasting relationship where we do a lot of back and forth and twinning on different projects with our sister city.
And I think, to Councillor Timpson's point, the MP's office through their methods would be finding a city of similar size to Sioux Lookout. That once you put yourself forward as willing to do that, then the federal agencies are helping to identify compatible twin city. Is that correct, CIO?
Yes, that's correct. Through Eric Malillo's office, they will assist us and also give us supports for translation as well. So once we find a sister city, we can have those discussions before we enter into an actual formal agreement as to what it is we want to define in our relationship. We can have those discussions with them in advance before we actually put this agreement forward.
And I think ideas that are more specific than broad, but might be that the municipality might be a conduit for local fundraising. If people wanted to donate money for humanitarian relief in that sister city, then through this arrangement, it gives people a very sort of transparent and legitimate way to funnel the resources they want to help that in Ukraine. I'll keep going around the table. Councillor Cassidy.
No, I'm in support of this. I think keeping some of the topics fairly broad and open-ended, I think is a good thing, because it allows a lot more specifics to fall under those categories. So I'm in favor of this.
Thanks. And CAO, the broad categories could be amended at some point in the future if they needed to be. Is that? But the idea is to be broad enough that, but it can be amended. Okay, thanks. Councillor Fenelon.
Just thinking, who would be the lead on that in the municipality?
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I guess the lead would be myself to start, and then it would be assigned to someone else.
Okay, as time goes on.
Correct.
Yeah, and in some ways I know we're loading staff, we're already loaded, but we hope there's considerable help, as the MP had said, they would make this available. And it seems to me that it's something that there might be interest in the municipality to do. CIO.
One thing I forgot to mention is Christine Hoey from the Chamber of Commerce had already reached out to the municipality to see if we were doing anything for the Ukraine. So that might be another conduit to help us, raise funds or do whatever in the community through the chamber as well.
Thank you. Councillor, I think I've been to Councillor Fenelon. Councillor Lego.
Yeah, no, I have no issue with the gesture. I'd be remiss without saying that there's many other countries out there that are having terrible internal strife or caused by external issues. Um, just in the top 10, you have 165 million people that are in need of basic water, food, shelter, and 30+ million people that have been displaced as well. Many of those countries are in Africa. So also our thoughts go to these people that are, it's just sad all around.
Absolutely, and your point's taken. And I think one of the things with the situation in Ukraine is that it's sudden, it's dramatic, and there are existing avenues to funnel, I guess, resources, funds to some of those other situations. Is there enough? No, but and the MP had reached out to us with this one, so put it for consideration. Councillor Bath.
No, I certainly agree with it. Anything we can do to support not only Ukraine, but any country that's put in a situation like they're in. And I think it shows we support this side of the world. We support what's happening, and we don't support what's happening to them. And I think that's important.
All right, CAO, how do we yeah, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I would suggest that perhaps the first part of the motion be read, and the agreement with the specific initiatives, that part be left out. And once we've reached out to Eric Melillo's office to find a sister city, we can further develop what it is we want to have in the agreement.
Very good. So I'll come to you, Councillor Timpson. So we would just be going as far as saying that we're going to direct staff to initiate the process, and then staff will come back with more detail after discussions with the MP's office.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Timpson.
I think the other thing to consider is that these sister city initiatives are generally long-term initiatives that we are, as an outgoing council, are committing the municipality to for decades to come. And, you know, we need to be fairly clear that the municipality will be able to honor that commitment long term. And I am certainly quite happy to be a sister city now while the country is in crises, but I don't know if it's fair to commit for, you know, decades in advance when we really, I don't know how these sister city arrangements work elsewhere. Do they just peter out after a few years? People lose interest, lose volunteers, or what? And I think we have to keep in mind that we're committing the town for a long term if we go through this.
CAO.
I was in previous employment with another municipality. We entered into a sister city agreement with a municipality in El Salvador, and that started out with an exchange of mayors visiting each other's country and towns, and it went on from there. I don't believe that it's still in existence because, like you said, Councillor Timpson, sometimes these things like peter off after a while, but that's something we can talk to Eric Melillo's office too, and perhaps when we come back with the agreement, we can say it's for a specified period of time, if council wants to define that period.
Very good. Anything further, council? Then we need, we're striking off the second part of this motion. Do I need to get the mover to agree? And the mover is, clerk?
Councillor Cassidy.
Councillor Cassidy. So we would end and a town in, and I will strike the word the Ukraine to Ukraine. Councillor Cassidy, you good? Yep, thank you. All in favor? Carried, thank you. No delegations, no separate discussions. Bylaws. Clerk, why don't you go through the bylaws? Thank you.
To you, Mayor Lawrence, certainly. So bylaw number 27-22, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 50-05, being a bylaw to adopt the personnel policies for the corporation of the municipality of Sioux Lookout as amended, to add policy number 3-57, disconnecting from work. Bylaw number 33-22, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute a contract between the corporation of the municipality of Sioux Lookout and LBE Group Inc. A bylaw number 28-22, being a bylaw to amend the corporation of the municipality of Sioux Lookout comprehensive zoning bylaw number 85-18 as amended, respecting the IFNA application. And bylaw number 29-22, being a bylaw to amend the corporation of the municipality of Sioux Lookout comprehensive zoning bylaw number 85-18 as amended, respecting the temporary use bylaw for ISC.
Thank you. Moved by those bylaws be read a first, second, third time and passed. Moved by Councillor Fenelon, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Notice of motion to reconsider, none. Outside resolutions, none. And councillor reports. Go around the table, starting Councillor Timpson.
Yeah, I attended the NOMA conference in Fort Francis the end of April. It was really nice to be back to the conferences. I do enjoy the conferences. There are two items that I took to the Environment Committee concerning the possible storing of nuclear waste in Ignace, and had a fair number of discussions with the Nuclear Waste Management Organization, as well as the citizens group, We the Nuclear Free North, and discussed with them whether they would be willing to come and have a panel discussion here in which both sides of the issues for and against the repository being where it is, with emphasis on the concerns of safety issues, concerns about the water table, concerns about the transportation issues. And so I'm hoping that will come to council next month. It was passed through the Environment Committee, and NWMO said that, at least that's what they told me, that they would be interested in discussing this. I'd like to see experts on the other side of the argument as well come and discuss, and just to have a very informative panel discussion, because I think the lack of information of both sides of the argument is one of the issues right now. And I brought the what do they call it? Food cyclers. We're bringing that to council next time as well, about engaging in a pilot project on food cycling, which is a way of dealing with one's composts using sort of machine. It's I don't know what you'd call it. It's like a portable incinerator. Anyway, that'll come to council, hopefully. And then that too was passed through the Environment Committee, and already a few people who heard about it have said they would like to participate in this pilot project. Okay, and yes, there was a few other interesting things in the conference. A lot of it was virtual. A lot of the speakers were virtual, and I think there were quite a number of participants as well, virtual. Not the same as all in person, but a fairly good adaptation. Hospital board, I was only able to attend part of that presentation by Garnet Anjikaneb, because I was at the conference. I only attended for that part of the hospital board meeting, and hopefully from his observations there will be some we'll be looking at some changes we need to make. And let's see, the Environment Committee, as I mentioned, 2 items, and I think TRC was, might have, I think I don't think I was able to be at the TRC this month, so. Anyhow, that's that. For
Thank
me.
you. Thanks, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Cassidy.
For myself, I just was just the Cedar Bay Development Committee meeting, one meeting of those. Another one coming next week, and I actually had to send my regrets to Environment Committee. Unfortunately, I was caught up with some of the other issues going on with my other life. So, yeah, that's about it. Late report this week, but I'll make it up next month.
Don't commit to something you might not be able to hold yourself to. Thanks, Councillor Cassidy. Councillor Fallon.
I had 2 meetings with the LCC meeting for the M&R, one on the 8th, I think, and one on the 11th. The one on the 8th was to go over the forest and see how the workers are being distributed and how things are moving. And then the other one was a meeting with the LCC and a bunch of, and the M&R and other, I don't know what I call them, scientists or whatever, but they work on the forest in trying to do better and what can be done better in the tree planting stage and other things to protect the caribou and so on and so forth. So it was a good meeting. Lasted, I think we had about 3 hours for both days on the LCC. And that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Fallon. Councillor Lego.
Yeah, quiet one as well. Just the Cedar Bay Ad Hoc Committee. Got the first draft there and went through and need to get my Sharpie out to get rid of some stuff. So it's not such a big report to council. That's it.
We appreciate that. Thanks. Councillor Bath.
Just my usual 2 committees, Hydro and PACE. The PACE board is really hurting right now for lack of people. So if you know people who may be interested, it's certainly worthwhile contacting PACE themselves or contact me so we can talk to them. What I'm afraid of, there's such a small board now that we're going to have to probably go into our bylaws and change our quorums just to make it work. So it's a valuable committee to have around in the area, and I wouldn't like to see it just fold because there's no board.
Thanks, Councillor Bath. I'll start off with staff appreciation lunch, the annual staff that attended, and this one was divided up by department. So on behalf of council, I appreciated the staff that we have, CIO LaRose and our executive assistant, Tiffany. And we had a nice lunch together. Emergency group management group meeting we held 2 days ago to start discussing the water situation in the municipality, and the staff are on top of it as much as they can do. There's only so much we can do, but the staff are doing a good job. And with the CIO, I went out and visited a couple of homes that were under threat of water, and we're trying to get help to them. But I know one of the residents had to leave his home today, and I'm sure there's more soon. Policing Costs Coalition, we've had in-person meeting with the OPP Policing Bureau. We've had multiple, I think 4 coalition meetings with Kenora and Pickle Lake and our the Fixers group. And we've tried to reach out to meet with the candidates in our local riding. So I did meet with the Green Party candidate via Zoom and sort of raised policing costs and a few other issues and tried to get there. She was supportive of bringing it forward in the campaign. The Liberal candidate was to meet with yesterday, but due to sickness, she postponed, and still trying to get a commitment from NDP and Conservative candidates, which I think will be forthcoming. Media interviews with the Bulletin, the Agenda, TBT News related to policing costs, other things, and TBT was on the water situation. Tourism Association meeting and dinner, they got together for the first time since they've missed 2 with COVID. So it's a dinner sponsored by Morgan Fuels that the tourism outfitters come to, and they'd asked me to attend, which do annually, and this was great. M&R did a lot of presentations there, and I addressed the association. They'd asked me to talk to the advocacy that we did for outfitters during COVID. Met with the representative from the Bombers at the arena, and just got an update and on their situation. Looking for my numbers here. Eric Malello met with the MP, our usual meeting. Talked about the sister city in Ukraine. We talked about policing costs, that we were dealing with that now and trying to get him to do what he could. And talked about long-term care as well. TRC, we had our regular monthly meeting. Northwestern Health Unit, we've had board meeting, executive meetings, auditor presentation, and strategic planning presentations and meetings. KDSB, a governance committee meeting, Ontario Health Team meetings, and IMO Health Task Force meeting. That was the month that was, so to speak. And I think we are now ready to move into closed session, clerk, to discuss matters of a general nature. As noted, the council moves into closed session at 8:04 p.m. Subject matter relating to a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board per Municipal Act 2001 as amended, Section 239 2K, one item, emergency services negotiations. Subject matter relating to a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, Section 239 2C, one item, property in downtown core. And finally, subject matter relating to personal matters about an individual, including municipal or local board employees per Municipal Act 2001 as amended, Section 239 2B, one item, appointments to councils, boards, commissions, and committees, membership. Moved by Councillor Fanlon, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. All in favor? Carried. We will now move into closed session and follow the instructions on the screen. Thank you. Looks like we're all made it back. Report out from closed session. Ratification of resolutions, bylaws arising from closed session. Clerk, help me out here.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence. So a couple of items this evening. The first resolution, motion would read that council authorizes the passing of bylaw number. Sorry, my apology. That is not what we're looking for here. There's only 2, not 3. That council ratifies direction provided to staff in closed session respecting property in the downtown core.
Moved by Councillor Fanlon, seconded by Councillor Timpson. All in favor? Carried. And through you, Mayor Lawrence, that the second motion would be that council approves amending Schedule A to bylaw number 92-18, being a bylaw to make appointments to various boards, commissions, and committees by deleting Darby Starrett from the Sioux Lookout Public Library Board. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Cassidy, seconded by Councillor Timpson. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And now we're at confirmatory bylaw.
Through Mayor Lawrence, that's correct.
That bylaw number 35-22 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Municipality of Sioux Lookout, May 18th, 2022, regular council meeting be read a first, second, and third time and passed. Mover. Councillor Lego, seconded by Councillor Fenelon. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, everybody. We are adjourned.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Good night.
Everyone.
Good night, Councillor Bath.
Stay dry.